I'll turn it over to Rachel.
Any announcements? I'm gonna take this one because it seems more like a question and which may require clarification, and plop that new business. I'll also put this on next week's minutes, but as per usual, we won't meet on Thanksgiving. But I'll send out a reminder of that. Okay. I'm presuming that nobody has any other urgent updates because they didn't put any in, and we can just go straight to the charrette. Christina?
Great, thank you, Rachel. So I have the charrette stuff open here, but I also have a science question, and one of the things that I need to do for the charrette is I need everybody's GitHub handles. So please, if you have a Google account and if you haven't had to get up yet, then if you have a Google account, it'll be very easy to get one. But I'd like to take the opportunity of having everybody here to ask a quick science question about an eclipse paper, and then I should be able to add everybody in to the charrette so that we can all edit things together. Does that work for everyone? Take a moment to get your GitHub while we talk about eclipse things, and then I'll add you in, and then we can all view it on our own screens. Okay, hearing no objections. Let's see. So this is, I just wanted a quick sanity check on this. I'm gonna send a request to take over the screen share so that I can show this in context of the paper, just in case. So I think some folks here probably remember the CHU experiment that was done at CASE. This is a paper draft that's going into the special issue of Frontiers, and it's in the first stage of review. So at this point, both reviewers have said that. Am I sharing it? Maybe not. There we go. Screen 2, screen 1. There we go. I will go back to the top again. So both reviewers have said, you know, this looks good, minor revisions, and both requested that we add in an ionoson plot, and several of the folks in this meeting are authors on here. So the I'm just gonna jump to the figures because I think that's probably the easiest way to tell the story on this. I will go to the map of stations first. Let's see. Here we go. So a lot of the stuff that we've done with the Personal Space Weather Station, of course, we're using WWV and WWVH, but this used the Canadian Time Standard CHU because if you draw a great circle path from CHU to Austin, it lined up almost exactly with the eclipse path. And often when we're looking at the eclipse, we can look at measurements across the path, but you don't usually get the opportunity to do it along the path. Usually the eclipse path doesn't approximate this so neatly. So this was a very unusual experiment. We had a wonderful time getting citizen scientists in here. And one of the, so the means of doing it was that they would receive the signal and then they would run a correlation to get a proxy for signal strength. And the statistical methods for that are a bit of a walk. They are in the paper, and I can supply a preprint to anybody who wants to go over them in detail, but I'm not going to spend time on them here. So but this is the signal from the Little Rock station, and it has this very clear eclipse peak at this point. So we were requested to put in a plot of FOF2 data, and so we took FOF2 data from 3 ionosons. We've got Austin, we've got Millstone Hill, and we've got Alpena, which is in Michigan, sort of in, I think it's like this part of Michigan. And So the Alpina one is the closest, by my reckoning, to the midpoint between CHU and Little Rock. And I noticed that here's the 7.85 megahertz that is the carrier frequency. Here is the signal enhancement that was observed in this gray line, which I'm realizing we need to add into the legend here. But this peak here is the same as this peak here that we're associating with the eclipse disturbance. And so I think that this FOF2 from Alpina is probably the closest analog to what was happening at that midpoint at that time. There's not a vertical incidence ionosonde like right between these two stations, unfortunately. But it did peak right beforehand. And so I'm basically, I just want to like kind of get a sanity check from the group here. Does this analysis make sense? Does this seem like a fair association? Am I doing anything wrong ionospherically? Because I'm not actually,
I think this is looking good, Christina.
Okay,
This is less of a science thing and more of a visualization thing. What do you
Mhm.
think about making the colors like both the Alpinas blue, but make all the FOF1s like dotted and the FOF2s dashed? So when you're
Oh, that's a
looking at
good
the
idea.
plot, when you look at the plot, you can associate a color with a particular location and a dot or a dash associated with FOF1 or FOF2.
That's a good idea. I do solid for FOF2 since it's the one and that I'm going to be focusing on. Just because
And what's the gray in the background again?
the gray is the proxy for signal strength that is
Okay.
measured here. So we're trying to basically have another instrument that sort of justifies, for lack of a better word, this peak. So
So
all right.
maybe add to the legend
Yeah.
the gray, yeah.
Gwen, were you gonna say something?
I was just wondering what the causal physics method is for a rise in proxy for signal level with a rise in FOF2.
That the critical frequency would go above the carrier. This is the carrier frequency from CHU that was being measured. So that was my logic, that if the critical frequency is higher from that, it would go above that point and then dip below it, and that would be associated with receiving more signal on that frequency.
Right, so that's the critical frequency for the path length concerned.
I would have thought that it would be less likely to be due to a change that an increase in amplitude at 7.85 megahertz would be less likely due to increase in FOF2 as a causality and more likely due to a decrease in D region absorption.
I'm with you on that one.
It just so happens that the FOF2 also increases because the reason D region absorption decreases is you get less photoionization. Less photoionization is also going to actually, does that make sense? FOF2 shouldn't FOF2 decrease if you have less photoionization?
This is why I'm
Christine,
asking you guys.
I would think FOF2 should decrease during the eclipse, but HMF2 should increase.
Yep, and it's forgive a visual point, but where you've got your caption means that the time around 1800 and just afterwards for April the 9th is obscured, so I can't look across to see if the pattern is repeated on the non-eclipse date.
That's a good point. Legend needs to. All right, so what I'll probably do, Morris and I are going to meet tonight to put this together, and we will make plots of HMF2. And if you guys don't mind, I'll just send you an email with what we have. I'll move the legend. We'll get the gray line onto the legend, and probably change the color map and have plots for FOF2 as well as HMF2, because we have one for that. I just don't have it handy right now. So
Yeah.
great. Thanks very much, everyone. Let's see.
I think it does show if you look at the Millstone Hill FOF2, it does show a decrease in FOF2 during the eclipse. Do you see that? So you see the rise in FOF2 with dawn.
Right here, yeah.
And yeah, and that rise in FOF2 from 12 UTC up to when the eclipse starts, that corresponds with a decrease in your received signal strength. And that makes sense because as FOF2 increases, the photoionization is increasing. At the same time, D region absorption is increasing. That drives the the signal strength down because you're getting more absorption. Then when the eclipse happens, FOF2 drops because you're getting more photoionization. And then D region absorption is also going to decrease, which would drive an increase in amplitude. That all, I think, makes sense intuitively. I think one thing that's very, one thing that we've talked about, or that has been talked about quite a bit, that I don't have a full handle on is, why is the time when you see the increase in your received signal strength during the eclipse, why is that so much later than, say, the drop in FOF2? Why is that timing not lining up?
Well, because if you were to map these, let me find the oblique path real quick. So this is sort of more what the three-dimensional version of this looks like, right? So we've got the eclipse path is slicing through. This was all computed with ephemeris and things like that.
Right.
So this is just a geometric illustration kind of thing. But yeah, so we've got CHU in the green, and this is a possible paths. And then here's the Little Rock station, and here's where Cleveland is. So it's sort of somewhere kind of past Cleveland when we project it down onto the map. So if I look at the station map again, here's the Little Rock station. The purple is the path of the eclipse on Earth's surface, and the blue is the path 600 or 550 kilometers up. So it's a little bit off center, right? And then we've got Millstone Hill, we've got Alpena, and we've got Austin are the three ionosons there. So if it's just south of Cleveland, the actual reflection point itself would be like somewhere around here, and we don't have an ionoson that we can look at there. So we're getting the stuff that's off center of the path, or is on the path but just at the wrong time. And so the conditions are going to be pretty different across those ionosons.
Right. And I think that all makes sense. And I think when I'm looking at that figure, it would be nice to have a paragraph or two that tells the story, that points out, okay, we see these time differences and we can explain them based on this geometry. And if you can have a story that consistently explains why this shows up first and that shows up second and this shows up third, that's consistent with the plot and the geometry, I think that would be a nice thing to include in the paper. And you may already have that in there.
Medium.
Okay. I think
I'm
that
always
would,
I'm always a little bit reluctant to point at things in stack plots, because I worry about like overreaching. And so
right, but
even
think
when I see things, I'm like too reluctant to point them out. So
yeah.
I'll send you an email with what I've got so far, and we can
Okay.
I'd like to get your feedback on it. But this has been
Sure.
very helpful.
Great.
All right, thanks everyone. So meanwhile, I see no GitHub handles. Does anyone wanna?
Mine is my call sign. So
Okay,
my
cool.
GitHub handle there. I started it off.
Excellent, excellent. So I will show you what I am doing on here. We have now moved into GitHub things. So there is this. Let's start with the HamSCI GitHub, because this is something that is going to be of interest to Emma and to everyone really. So HamSCI has a GitHub, and it contains. Sorry, I'm just moving my Zoom thing. It contains several repositories. How many repositories do we have actually? 38. From various projects over time. And should probably add a README for folks who haven't been here. But I've created one so that we would sort of have a way to go over the feedback from our design charrette, and I'm using the projects function to be able to go through this. So everything is currently as issues on this sort of dummy repository. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into this repository, and I'll go into settings, and I'll add some collaborators, and then we can all bring more people on. Collaborators and teams. One moment, it wants me to two-factor authenticate. Even though I two-factor authenticated just very recently. Okay, there we go. 4-0.
The computers are very needy.
It just wants to be reassured.
Yeah.
All right, let's see here. So, collaborators and teams. I think what I'm going to do for this, actually, just to make it simple, is I will make this repository public. And then I don't know if everybody should be able to kind of get at it. So if you go to the PSWS repository, this is I took the feedback people have put into the web form, and I've converted it all to issues. I've not figured out yet how to programmatically move issues over. I have some things that I played around with, and I think it is possible. There were few enough of them that I did this semi-manually. But here's all of the issues. So the sort of anatomy of a GitHub issue is not going to be well illustrated by looking at these actually. But usually for a GitHub issue, if you have, any of the standard things you might ask for, there would be a template for them. So just to pick one, I put in the way that people described their thing. I put in who suggested it. And some of these were kind of in the form of like notes, but we can now go in and we can post additional things as GitHub issues and, add comments, add information, and create sub issues for them or move them around or reference them from one another. So all of the usual things you can do for GitHub issues, we can do for these, but obviously just having a list doesn't get us very far. So I have this project, and I'm going to copy this into the chat window if I can find the chat window. There is the chat window. All right. So go ahead and click that link if you would, and let me know if you can actually see it.
I can see it.
Cool. Are you able to move things around in it?
I don't know. Now I'm signed in. So I presume that, let's see, as a signed in person,
Yeah,
that
you should
has
have like HamSCI super access because you're the one of the owners of the group.
but if I go to like an incognito tab, I can still see it,
Okay.
but I cannot drag things around. So as a anonymous person, I can read, but I cannot modify.
Okay. Cool. So I still should go into collaborators and teams and I should add some people in. So we're going to add some people.
Mm.
Let me just take a look here. John, I trust you with admin. Just going to do this a bunch of times. Let's see. I wonder if I can do this create team thing. I've not done this before.
Yeah, I was looking at that yesterday, thinking about how we might use that sort of feature. I do think that will be useful. Mm-hmm.
John Siegmans. There we go. And then AC8XY. That can only be you, right, Rachel?
Oh, I hope so.
All right, I'm almost through the list here. 1 second. AB4EJ.
Yeah, Christina, that might be different from what was used before. I don't know.
I see two of you. I see this one has your name on it, so I think that's got to be you. AB4EJ1.
Yeah, they're both going to be me, but
Okay.
some of it's legacy reasons.
Gotcha. Would you like both of them on there?
It probably makes sense to do that. And then also my team is developing a new GitHub that is going to have all of the code, excluding settings that contain passwords for the personal space weather station network server and everything related to that. So we'll probably want to tie that in at some point.
That's amazing, Bill. Thank you.
That is amazing. We should so we should probably, if this team thing works well, we should probably have a PSWS network team and so forth.
Right, yeah.
All right.
And I am not an expert with GitHub. I find it a little bit confusing, but that's where the student comes in handy because they use it extensively, and I can just delegate. So when you ask me things, I may or may not know the answer, but anyway.
Sounds great. All right. Taking a look here. Anyone else that I should get in here that I'm missing? Rob, I think I follow you on GitHub, don't I? Maybe not. We can start with this list, and then Nathaniel, you should be able to add people as well, I think, because
Yes, I should have full access to it. So
yeah, because it's a thing. We'll have to come up with a little snazzy icon for ourselves. All right, so here we go. Okay, so where were we? I was under here, and then I wanted to go to github.com/HamSCI. Just navigate all the way to it. And then this is most recent, so we've got,
Hit the wrong button.
no worries, one of my cats is very upset, I think, because they found a spring. Okay, let's see. So yes, projects, PSWS design charrette. So now I think I should be able to, well, I guess maybe I should add people on the repository that this is relevant to. I'll try that. So I'm going to go to settings, collaborators and teams, find people or a team, PSWS, developers. That's odd. Add teams. There we go. Excellent. All right. I think everybody here can do maintain access to start with. Okay, so everyone should now have access to the PSWS charrette, and if we add you to that team, then you should get access. Okay, so here's our list of issues. Again, we can go in and we can reformat these and change them around. And so sort of the thing that I wanted to get at today is looking at this, this set of things. So there's a few different views for the same information here. This one is the sort of Kanban board where we can create columns and we can take these and we can move them around between the columns. And I was thinking that that would be a good approach for some of this. So for example, you can see this is in the done category in the columns. They've got an in progress category, but I believe we can create our own. And so you have, here's the features. And then in table view, it shows up as a column in the table. And we can assign the issues to people. We can change them around. And this also does not need to be only one repository. This can also look at issues from multiple repositories in one view such as this. So just because it's a way for everybody to look at it. And then also, this isn't going to be particularly illuminating now because, again, a lot of these are in what would be, you know, these are sort of draft issues or something like that. They're not very well pinned down. But if these were issues in a more, you know, strict sense, in a development sense of like, this is a thing that we need to do so that we can hit this milestone and everything's actually already roadmapped out, we could then use this roadmap view to put this into sort of a software development Gantt chart. I'm gonna not try to set it up right now though, because I don't think that we're anywhere near ready for that. So sort of the first thing that I wanted to suggest looking at these, I think that some of them are like, you know, need to be, we should probably triage them in some way, I guess. Like we should figure out, you know, which ones are not actionable. And then also like I tried to combine things where they needed to be combined. Another category that we might conceivably have is you know, things that have to do with hardware versus software, things that have to do with interface design or data viewing. There's a few different ways to do it. And then there's kind of like, there's some top level stuff. Like this was kind of my idea about maybe we should have, you know, how do we want to organize the GitHub, make this stuff more obvious, the different things we're trying to do. I guess one thing we could start with is kind of putting things into the category of like, this seems relevant to Bill's team or not relevant to Bill's team. That would probably be a good place to start.
Does this thing allow you to tag things so that to make searching more easy or?
Absolutely, yeah. I will show a good example of that. So,
And you probably already cleaned out the duplication. There's probably, you said you were
Yeah.
combining some things.
yeah, there wasn't much. The only one that there was multiple people had said madrigal. So let's start with that one because that's nice and easy. So other things that you can do that are kind of useful. If I think this will, yeah. So if I type the pound sign, right? I can link these to one another. So let's see. What is this one? This one is create magical backend to PSWS database. I'm trying to think of something that's somewhat relevant for this.
Well, one comment on that is that the Madrigal team at Haystack just got a huge grant that Catherine is working on to provide a happy interface to Madrigal. So that is kind of the direction that things are moving in. So we've already started working on a happy interface for the personal space weather station network, which may actually provide more utility than developing a whole Madrigal server. But that's a discussion for another day.
Well,
But
so that's
Bill-
a good example though. So so
Would
then
you say it's a happy coincidence that they got that award just as we're working on doing this integration planning?
yes, I was very happy to hear it. Yes, very.
Yes.
there we go.
That's
All right,
that's very
cool.
good news.
So we can do something like that, right? So actually I will show an example of this. So if I go to, I'm gonna open a tab and I'm gonna go to PSWS charrette. All right, so here we are. So I'll go issues and then I will create a new issue and I will say happy interface and then I will say you know, happy interface to PSWS database. This might actually already be represented. I can't remember if it was already covered in the Madrigal one, but this is for illustrative purposes. So we should say we are happy to link this to issue, hit #, issue 8 happens to be the number of that. So now that's an issue. Then I hop over here to the design charrette. And I just need to add.
Yeah, I already have a prototype of that running, and I'm working with the Happy team from Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab, and we're going to post it on their GitHub as an alternate server type. They have several different server types, and we're the first people to implement it in Django. So they're very happy to hear about that, and we're going to be and what we might do is, I mean, can we put a link in this to that once we have that posted? I suppose
100%. Yep.
should be possible. Okay.
Yep, absolutely. Oops, create new issue.
That's very good news. I'm very happy to hear that, Bill.
I
That's
thought you
never
would
gonna
be.
get old.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
that was the outcome of me spending a week in actually 3 days in San Antonio and working with the guys who are the developer of the spec and have developed all the software. So that made things go along smoothly.
Yeah, that's really good. I'm glad you went on that. And that reminds me too, because you tried to visit Steve Serwin then. I have Steve Serwin's now in rehab. And last week I actually sent him a care package that I signed a card. I had all the faculty of the engineering and physics department at Scranton sign the card. I also signed it from HamSCI. And I sent him a care package that has a W3 USR t-shirt in it. And I think he should have it just arrived there on Monday. I talked to him yesterday. He didn't get it yet, but so they're trying to figure out where the package is, but it should be in. And the other really good news is Steve Serwin also led a Frontiers paper on the HFTDOA experiment. And I am so happy to say that it got we got our 2 reviews back and they're both minor revisions. So we're really happy about that. And I met with Steve and Tom McMahon and David Thummins yesterday, and they're working on those revisions. So that's really good news.
That is fantastic, Nathaniel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had hoped to have dinner with Steve when I was in San Antonio, but he couldn't move around except in a wheelchair and all this and that. So apparently all that radiation treatment he had on his groin for the prostate cancer destroyed a lot of bone. And so I don't know how you fix the pelvis, but anyway, they're going to have to work that. Yeah.
He's had multiple hip replacements, but the one good thing that's come of it is that every time they do a hip replacement, they give him back the old parts, and he's been able to make antennas out of them. So he has a really nice 70 centimeter 440 megahertz antenna that's designed out of his old hip, and he can use a lag bolt as a resonance adjustment. So he was working on an article for QEX or QST on this.
Oh my God. Move over, Roald Dahl. That is delightful. All right. Nathaniel, do you have a mailing address for him so I could send him a card?
I do. I can send that. Well, I don't know how much longer he's going to be at rehab, so maybe just send it to his QRZ address. As I said, we sent him something to the rehab facility that arrived on Monday, and I talked to him yesterday afternoon, and it hadn't been delivered to him yet.
Gotcha.
So I just forwarded him the tracking information. I'm hoping that have not heard back yet that it's actually been delivered to him. So.
All right, good to know. All right, cool. So yeah, Bill, to your point about linking these, so as you saw, I made this happy interface to PSWS database number 27. And I put in that little link in there, and now when I go to the create Madrigal backend, there is this the note that this was mentioned is kind of in this timeline. So you can add comments, we can all add comments to these, you can link them to one another by just mentioning them with the little pound sign. And then the other thing that we can do is we can add labels to this. So these are all kind of the standard things. So bug, documentation, duplicate, enhancement, good first issue, help wanted, invalid, question, won't fix. These are all categories, and then we can also add other labels to it if we wish. So if I click, let's see, edit labels, you can create a new label and set the color, the name, and the description for that. So that's a way that we could do, all sorts of things with it. And then the other thing that you can do with a GitHub issue that's worth knowing about is that you can assign people to them. So let's see, I'm trying to think of a good example of sort of a mature GitHub issue set that I could point to briefly. I think maybe I'll show the open space ones. So here's the official GitHub repository for open space. And here's how they use their issue stuff. So, some of these are like not possible to see all of Show Composer depending on screen resolution. This has been tagged with component tags for different parts of the software. You can see it's customized to their project. Things are tagged as enhancement or bug or core component. And these are opened and closed by all members of the community, and they have a whole big pile of them. And then there's also these closed ones here, various things that have gotten fixed. But usually their workflow is that usually people bring it up in a Slack channel, and if you haven't opened a lot of issues before, one of the developers might tell you, you should really open an issue for this, or they will open one and they will link it. But, having something where there's sort of, like we're doing right now, right? There's kind of the layer of communication that's all of us talking to each other, and then this is a good way to kind of keep track of everything. So,
Christina, this looks absolutely excellent. I actually have to go right now, but okay. I think this is all on the right track. You can keep talking if you want, or you can call it.
I think we can probably call it today, and then we can come back to categorizing these next week. So what I would ask that everybody do, if you have a few minutes, is just go into the first of all, go in here and just take a look at like the table view or look at the issue set. Scroll through the different feedback that we got. And if you have any comments, please do leave them on there. And then for kind of this Trello board view of categorizing these, consider what categories we would want to put these into. And then if you have any other ideas that come to mind, please feel free to open another issue just in that PSWS charrette repository. And I think we can kind of go from there when we meet next week, not Thanksgiving, but next week.
Yes,
All right.
I like it. All right. Thank you, Christina. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. And
Okay,
everyone,
don't
don't forget
forget-
the HamSCI Science Zoom this afternoon.
4 p.m.
Don't forget about November sweepstakes this weekend, sideband.
W3USR will be on. I've got a whole team of students and community members, so we will be on.
We'll be on too.
Awesome. 7-3, everyone.
Alrighty.